the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
My guest is Dr. Hannah Spier. She's a Norwegian-born psychiatrist and cognitive behavioral psychotherapist. She's based in Zurich, and she dissects how liberal narratives, pop therapy fads, and identity politics have reshaped the mental health field today. And we are going to look under the cover of what's happening socially and how to grow in our social skills and behaviors. Welcome back, Dr. Spier.
Hi, thank you so much. It's great to be back.
Why do you think we've seen this significant social shift when it comes to our interactions with others that help us and them enjoy time together?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a big question. I deal a lot with women, and I've seen a lot of women clinically. So the reason that I'm speaking out about the things that I'm writing about is because I see sort of how they now more and more struggle to adapt to adult life in many different ways and in different ages. And I do think that it can be boiled down to sort of letting a lot of grievance in and not having developed traits that we might not be born with in abundance naturally, right? So I talk a lot about personality and personality traits because that's what makes us different from birth. And we have sort of forgotten a little bit about that. We've forgotten about temperament. And there's this sort of, we're raising, I'm talking about girls now because I'm very concerned with women. We are treating them with a sort of universal parenting philosophy almost, where the goal is to have them all become ambitious and assertive, right? Confidence above all. And that only focuses on certain traits. And if you are already sort of born with sort of an abundance of trait extroversion, with being assertive and confident, and a lot of girls are, then if you focus in on just encouraging that, you end up with other things being underdeveloped. And then you can get into trouble. So that's a little bit what I talk about.
It's very profound when you mention this, that there's this overemphasis on the development of extroversion and ambition among young girls in particular. And you see this with the adult women who are struggling to adapt to adult life, especially in a social setting, and I see this as well, where women are just feeling like they can't assimilate with others, and they don't always realize this, but they're noticing they're out of kilter with their peers. They're easy to maybe sometimes write off uncomfortable situations, but in part I often see it takes two to tango, and often in those circumstances both sides has this disconnect socially where the social skill is just off and out of skew. So where are you seeing are the main areas that are lacking today as a result of this overemphasis on ambition and this underformation of other skills?
Right. So yeah, I see because I observe, parenting, how my peers parent, right? My peers are millennials. And I see that girls are not, they are not encouraged to listen and be polite. They're not taught that adults are talking, now you have to listen and don't interrupt, because we confuse rudeness for confidence, for being assertive. And you need to speak your mind, you need to speak up and express yourself no matter what. And so if you already have that, and a lot of girls do already have that, then it becomes difficult later in life when you are you've been taught to be rude, and you think that that is you asserting yourself, you're standing up for yourself. That becomes that is the opposite of pro-social behavior, which is what we want to encourage. If we want to do what you say, assimilate, get along great with others. And we need that trait, agreeableness, to be encouraged in order to do that. And it is also because women are slightly higher in neuroticism, we tend to feel negative emotions more than others. So we need to also be taught how to contain that, how to withstand discomfort, which is also very important for those situations. Because when we become overwhelmed with anything, it becomes very difficult to consider others, which is also then in that pro-social domain. Because if you become overwhelmed by any negative emotion in the moment and you're in a social situation, what are you going to do then? It becomes difficult to not disconnect. You cannot withstand your own negative emotions.
And
so that is what I see in women.
You shut down. It's fight or flight. So either they're lashing out or they're completely withdrawing.
Exactly. So that is what I see a lot in women now, that they are not they're not taught how to contain negative emotions, and they are not properly taught how to and when to consider others.
So I think that what's really striking me is with this overemphasis on asserting yourself, on speaking up. Even when you mentioned, if there's a level of discomfort or disagreement, you're going to speak up, you're going to assert yourself. And maybe it's as simple as where you're going to eat, or that you don't like spending the whole day somewhere with the circumstance and the people in which you're in. And there's this loudness that is occurring, or this negativity and bad attitude that's so common today. And part of me thinks the bigger picture also is the family breakdown, and that this is what happens when you don't have siblings, when you don't have the connectedness of family, and therefore the inconvenience of family that's really good, the inconvenience of siblings. I even think about this with my 3 children. There are a lot of times where my 5-year-old is very inconvenienced because my 1-year-old has a bigger need and she's capable of waiting, my 5-year-old, but my 1-year-old is not. And you see this, that this actually helps to teach, I am not the center of the universe. There are other people who have and need things, and I should actually be thoughtful of them in these circumstances as well. So it's not just a matter of not being loud about what you need, want, or disagree, but being thoughtful toward others. And I think that ties into where you actually talk a lot about conscientiousness and how conscientiousness is missing today.
Absolutely. You're so right to bring up the sibling part. Siblings force parents into putting boundaries, into saying no, because there's just only so much we can handle. And that conscientiousness, the reason I talk about that, the reason that is so important is because that helps us, as I was saying before, that helps us contain those negative emotions, because conscientiousness is what makes us endure is a word I was looking for, right? And to endure those negative emotions, and when parents put boundaries, that trains that conscientiousness and that discipline to just hold the line. Wait, you have to wait. It's not your turn. And those boundaries are sadly missing now. We're older when we have kids. That's also a huge element here. We're older and we have fewer kids. When we're older, what happens if we get really sentimental, right? It's we have this perspective and we say yes, it's just for a limited time, and then when we only have that one kid, we just say, and in addition to that, we outsource a lot of parenting. So I see a lot of parents that have an hour in the evening with the kids, maybe 1.5 hours in the evenings with the kids, where they feel guilty about being away all day. Then they come home to that one kid, maybe 2 kids, and they're older, they're sentimental, and they feel guilty, and they just don't say no. And so those things don't get trained, and the kids are then, and especially with back to girls, we have more negative emotions. We need help to contain them. Otherwise, we're going to get into trouble later on, and that's what I see.
Could you define conscientiousness? Because I feel like this is rarely mentioned in modern culture. You mentioned agreeableness, and we all know what that is. We know when we experience it and we like it, but we kind of struggle to do it, to be agreeable and down to earth and willing. But conscientiousness is practically erased in our modern day language. Can you give a definition, maybe some examples of it?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a personality trait. It's a domain, and within there you have to be careful, to be diligent, to be reliable. So self-discipline is in there. That when you aim for something, you have follow through, because you can reach long-term goals. So planning ability, being systematic and thorough, deliberate. So that is the most consequential thing for long-term success. It's not intelligence, it's not wealth, it's conscientiousness. If you have that, if you're a hard worker and you're reliable, you can reach your goals much better.
Yeah. Now, when I was thinking about conscientiousness, it's funny because I think our definition, and not that this was yours, but when we define it and even look up definitions, because I went, well, doesn't and I was defining in my head very much when I was thinking about it, to be thoughtful toward others as we're doing things was kind of how I was thinking of it. And so then I started looking up what's the true definition. And every definition I saw, Dr. Spier, was very self-centered. So it was, hardworking, organized, goal directions, but it was missing the social component of that character trait that you mentioned, being reliable, follow through, considering others within the midst of our hard work in our organization, that there's a bigger picture outside of my goal alone, but that the goal has a greater context, and that includes people beginning, during, and at the end of the goal.
Yeah, no. So in conscientiousness, you have also, being reliable and trustworthy. So that has to do with others. But being considerate, that is agreeableness. So you can have, for example, that's how you will get narcissists can be extremely conscientious, and that's how you get the very successful narcissists.
Got it.
But they're very low in agreeableness. Yes.
Okay.
So that's not to be confused, but people will like those who are conscientious because they are reliable and trustworthy. But to trust others, that's in the trait agreeableness.
I see that definition. So why do you think it is that a conscientiousness is missing today? Because it's a little bit of I'm almost seeing a contradiction, because you're saying there's a lot of ambition, there's a lot of assertion happening right now, but overly so. So why is conscientiousness part of kind of working out that overemphasis on ambition and assertion?
Yeah, so assertion and ambition, that's in trait extroversion. That's not in conscientiousness. So that's a different thing. Yes. But discipline has become a dirty word. Yes, because discipline is sort of then you're erasing your self-expression, and that's sort of, then you're being mean to yourself. Or if you demand some discipline for others, you're being judgmental, which is another dirty word.
I see. So you're saying that discipline, that formation, that organization is missing. So when someone is overly developed in assertion and ambition, but without the hard work, the organization, the goal direction that requires boundaries, that requires correction and redirection, you're saying that side of it is really missing. So you've got the ambition without the order and the hard work and the discipline, and even maybe the punishment that is, or consequence, should I say, that's necessary in life.
Exactly. So you have people who are very ambitious and they have lofty goals, but if they have no conscientiousness, they won't reach it, and then they get resentful. So then you have the sort of the resentful.
Yes.
Yeah, and that ends very, very poorly.
Yes, and millennials.
So those two things can be disconnected.
I see. And millennials today, I've been doing a series all week on millennials. Millennials today really struggle with the consequence of actions, but also with the fact that sometimes their hard work doesn't amount to anything. And that's a consequence, whether it's a social consequence, it's politics, it's the politics of life. I remember when I was a little girl and I might try out for a particular part in the Nutcracker for dance and be devastated when I didn't get what I wanted. And maybe talent deserved it for me or for someone else. But my mom, I remember explaining, hey, this is politics. We don't always get what we want. Sometimes there's an ideal for someone else to have this position. Maybe there's an unfair reason why someone else is being prioritized. But all of this is part of a consequence of not just a natural consequence of our behavior, but also a natural consequence of fallen human nature and brokenness that we have.
Yeah, there's this idea that we have this culture of narcissism. We're raised with this mantra of you deserve it, and if you want it, then you should have it, right? If you believe enough in something, then it'll come true, which are just completely unrealistic things to tell a child. And so that I think is what you're talking about there.
That was the Best of the Week on Relevant Radio. The best way to listen to the Best of the Week is on the Relevant Radio app, free and always free. Download and share the #1 free Catholic app today in the App Store.